Hello and good evening. It is Wednesday, and you know what? It's time for Ask Andrew Anything on email marketing. You gotta forgive my voice. Been down with flu and cough for the last few days, and no, it's not COVID, and thank God. But the show must go on. So energy is a bit low. So today is going to be a bit slow for me. I hope you can bear with me. But nevertheless, we've got two questions that we will be answering. And just a quick introduction if you're new to me, my name is Andrew, and I call myself the email guy, primarily because I do this. I help businesses build deeper relationships with their prospects and, of course, their customers through the medium of emails, right? And the reason why we do that is because once you establish a familiarity with your prospects and customers, buying becomes easier, right? Because people buy from people. They buy from people they trust. They buy from people that shows up, right? So that's the value of email marketing. Okay. Let me see. Anybody? Okay, fine. Let's proceed. So if I see any comments, so if you have any questions, pardon me. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me about, email marketing, I come off live every Wednesday from I spend about 30 minutes thereabout to answer your questions. You can then go to this website. It's called ants.digital. That's my website, /ask. Or if you have a phone with you, then you can use your phone and scan the QR code. It will lead you to a Google form, which allows you to then submit your questions. Any questions, whatever it is that you have, either it's strategy or either it's technical, anything on email, I will do my very best to answer in the following week. Okay. And well, when regards to social, I'm more active on LinkedIn, primarily because that's where my audience is. I'm testing out Twitter. Um, Probably give me a few weeks. I need to understand the platform first. But generally speaking, I'm more comfortable and more present on LinkedIn, right? So if you want to follow me and look at the content which I post, regularly, I can't guarantee I post daily, but if there is any strategies that I want to share, then besides the email list that the members have joined me, you can also follow me on the social media. So it's called ants.digital again. Backslash LinkedIn, and there is an accompany QR code which you can link to my LinkedIn profile, right? Click follow. And if you want to be notified whenever I post something new, then click the bell button. Right? Simple as that. Okay. So you can observe what I do, and until you're familiar with. The idea is, you notice now, is to create as many touch points as possible with you and also my prospects. Okay. And in order to do that, then obviously I will showcase some of the skill sets. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to, you feel you're comfortable working with me or not. That's fine. Okay. Um, okay. So let's start. The first question of the night. This is an interesting one from Sarah, and she is asking, which one is more important to open rates? Is it a sender name or subject lines? If you ask me based on my 2 years plus of sending emails almost daily, I would say the first thing is sender name and then followed by subject line. Now, as if you look at the physical world, you would want to talk to somebody you know or you're familiar with, right? So if you receive an email from somebody that you've not heard of, or probably you'll sign up for the first time and you probably forget about the guy, and then you receive an email from me which you have been, let's say, opening and reading it. So which one do you open first? All right, now then once you go that, obviously you pick the one that you're familiar with, number one. Number two, that the next thing is your subject line. If your subject line is interesting enough, I may consider to open. If not, I may say, okay, fine, this is an email from Andrew and I'll open later. Right, it doesn't pique my interest. But if you have a great subject line, but the sender name is somebody you don't know, and nowadays everybody is worried about being phished, about scams on emails and all those things, and very likely that you will not then open it. No, irrespective whether the subject line is interesting or not, unless if it comes in from somebody you're familiar with, which then comes to three things that you can do for your sender name. Right, the sender name. In other words, some call it a from name. So the first email from is it from Andrew and all those things. Let me show you a quick one. Okay, for example, These are emails. Okay, I've set up a test account. These are emails that I send, on a daily basis, right? So initially it was Andrew, the email that was truncated. So we moved to the next one about the character limit. But then when we start using something like this, then you can see the full, and you will then be able to identify who is this coming from, and then you decide, whether the subject line is suitable for you or not. All right. So this is what you call the sender name, and this is what you call your subject line, and then the pre-headers. Clear? All right. So let's go back to this. So three things that you can do, right? So assuming if your company brand or your brand is well known, okay, so then what you can do is your sender name can start with your company or brand. Okay, clear? For example, let's look at this again. I think I have this. For example, you have this. This is an ad. Okay, this is a personal. For example, like this. All right, this is a brand of a wine distributor, Swarovski. You probably heard of it, and if you're not, then probably Swarovski is not doing a great job in marketing. But generally, I think you probably heard of it. And then Orgain, for example. All right. So these are company names. So you can actually start with that. Okay. Okay. Next one is, let me see. Okay. So it could be, for example, let's say Andrew from Orgain, or Andrew from Google. Okay, so that's the other way. If you're working for a company and you want to make it personalized so that, let's say, your prospects or your customers are familiar with you already, and you want to lead on with your name first, followed by the company. Alternatively, you can do something like what I do. All right, my brand is basically Andrew, and my name is Andrew. Right, so I can just decide to just do this one, have my own name, or I can then decide to have this, right? Which is, well, you call it your trade name, I guess, right? So either one of this is fine. So you need to be then consistent. So every time you stick with this, consistently when you send emails, you actually use this. Excuse me, I need to cough a bit. Okay, I'm back on. So three options that you can do, right? You can start with your company brand or company or brand, or name from the company. So Andrew from Orgain, or Andrew from, let's say, Google. And the third one, if you're on personal brand, if you're a single operator or a freelancer, for example, then focus on using your name. The company name, obviously, you will have a company, but that's used for transactional purposes, issuing invoice and all those things. But you want to use your personal name because that's what generally the public will know you as. So you can actually play with this. Sarah, I hope this would be useful for you. So let's move on to the next one. Now, this is interesting. Majid has a question, and he's asking, I think it's he. He's asking, your emails or newsletters have very little graphics. Why? Interesting. So generally, there are three types. One is plain text, and the other one is hybrid. All right. I'll explain to you why. And then the other one is HTML. So plain text, which is now rarely used, all right? Plain text is, as what it calls, is just text. And the thing with plain text is you cannot so-called highlight the, so let's say, for example, I want to say sign up now. Okay, and I have other text in the front and other text at the bottom, at the back. I cannot highlight this and build a link. That's plain text. So that's why most modern email marketers now, and that's probably 99.99%, would be using the hybrid text. Essentially, it's an HTML email, but only contain text. And this is what I use in my emails. So there's no header image. It used to have, and then I decided to get rid of it. There's no header image, and there's just text. Now, the reason I do that is because it allows me to do exactly this. All right. So let me give you an example. Oops, wrong one. Let me give you an example. There you go. So, for example, this is an HTML text, right? You have images, and then you have a combination of text, but primarily a lot more images. And it's great because if you are doing e-commerce, your hero product needs to be featured. All right. Sometimes you may not be able to describe the product, and the best way is, use a picture. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. So this is a HTML email. All right. And this is a HTML hybrid, which is primarily text. So that's why you see you can build a link, right? This one linked to somewhere else, and this one goes to somewhere else, right? So you can actually do that. So that's hybrid, or primarily the one that I use. Okay. Now, there is also something that you need to be aware of. There are Apple Mail mailbox providers. There are Gmail, and the big ones, your Outlook and also Yahoo. Do I have this? Okay, fine. Let me see. The thing that mostly happens with Apple Mail is this. And why normally I don't do unless, if it's absolutely necessary. Okay. You notice this is an Apple Mail on my desktop. And if you see this, right? So this is text. That's fine. You can see it very clearly. If you look at this, then you see this. Apple Mail has this peculiarity where, let me make it bigger for you. Oops. Right? Where it asks you whether this message contains remote content, which is basically link to display your images, right? So your images is stored in a server somewhere, and then it's connected by a link, and it will pull that data away, so into your email, right? So that's why if you have a lot of images, for example, it doesn't affect the size of your email, primarily because it is not residing on email itself, it's just pulling data from another server. So when you see this, all so-called images for Apple Mail would have, all these images will be lost. Okay, so for example, let's say, you see, unless you allow it. So if you say load remote content, then you probably see this. There you go. Okay, so it is important for you, in your case, to identify if you want to send HTML or images, email with images, memes, GIFs, for example, is you need to then make sure or segregate your audience into Apple Mail user and the rest. Okay. So for example, this is what I do. On MailerLite, it allows me, let me see which one. Okay. On MailerLite, it allows me to do this. All right. I can then separate users whose email client is using, let's say, Mobile Safari, and or either the email client, which is the app on your phone, is using Apple Mail. So good for me is, only 2 of the users on my list are using this. So if I want to decide, for example, to send an email with lots of graphics, so let's say I want to send a New Year's greetings, for example, then I will make sure that I will segment these 2 users out and only send text email to them, and the rest of the other subscribers will receive my graphics email, right? Another thing that you also need to be aware of is this. Where is, let me see. Okay. It is important now, if, for example, you say I can't separate them, most email after the after Apple has released the MPP, which is the mail protection, privacy protection, most of the ESPs has a function which allows you to segregate your Apple Mail. So check with your service providers and see whether they can help you with that. One thing I want to highlight is this. Let me see. Okay. So, no, this is not a good example. Maybe this one. Okay. You notice now, in this case, just I'll show you that, for Apple Wines, I think this is the email here for Apple. No, not Apple Wines. So wine something. Where is it? Just now. It went missing. Went missing on me. Okay. Okay, let's see whether we can see Net Reporter. Can we see Net Reporter? Okay, maybe we can use this. Okay. You notice this is what you call alternate text. That means you replace, maybe this one will do. Okay, there you go. So the image, if you requires to be loaded, so what you do is you then put the alternate text into each one of these image. So that way, at the very least, the users, even if they don't load the images, and this is only peculiar for Apple Mail users, they can actually see the rest of, at least an idea of what the image all about. And then they can decide, whether they want to load the remote content or not. And if it does, then there you go. It looks nice, right? So that's how you make sure to, if you want to send emails to everyone and you cannot segregate the users, then this is what you do. You make sure you have the alternate email, alternate text to each of your email, and then that will be fine. But my preference is if there's any graphics, I would then separate them or segment them out. Okay. So Majid, I hope I've answered your questions. Oh yes, I owe Sarah something. Let me see. Okay, Sarah, we talked about sender names, right? And you notice, like for example, I tested this. Can you see me? I tested this, and initially I started with Andrew. Not this. I started with this. Then when I was playing around with MailerLite, I forgot about it, and I switched it back to Andrew /email, and then it's truncated, right? And while I was doing this, I realized I made a mistake, and then I revert back to this. Now, at what point you may ask is, there's a limit to the number of characters. So I'm going to give you the list, also called the character limitation for each of the providers. Ready? So if you're using Windows Phone, I know nobody uses it, but then again, for completion, so-called, for completeness sake, we will do it. So you have 17 characters. For iPhone, and okay, this one is no longer in play, but still is 24 characters. Okay, so 2 characters means include A, B, and then include space, and then C. So this is 4 characters. Clear? The next one is iPads. So if you're watching or reading emails on your iPad, it is 23 characters. And what else? Android, general Android phones, okay, because Android phones has many different form factors, but generally speaking, is 32. Okay, if this is on mobile, if you're on desktop, like what I do mostly, then you have, let's say, Outlook. If you're using the Outlook web-based client, is between 25 to 30 characters. Okay, and then you have Gmail, which probably like 45-50% of the users, you have your character limit is 20. And finally, Yahoo. Now, Yahoo is peculiar in the sense that it depends on your dimension of your reading device. Okay. So, for example, if you're on desktop, if you have 2048, 1080 kind of screen dimension, then obviously you will see a lot more. If you're on the older, let's say a notebook, then probably it's lesser. So these are the characters. So the sweet spot is between 20 to 25. Okay, so that it fits into anyone that is reading this email or whatever device they use. Now, if you say, Andrew, but my name or company name is pretty long and can't fit them in, so you make sure at least your 2025 focus on something or basically the name that people are familiar with first. So, for example, if people know you as Andrew, and again, let's say from again is too long, or from Swarovski is too long, then you can then put Andrew and Swarovski, maybe cut off the from, and or use a truncated line. For example, use a vertical line, so that at the very least I can read in through and I will see Swarovski a little bit. Okay, so it depends. So if you say Swarovski is an important name, and people know that because they don't care about you, the sender, then you start with Swarovski, and then you have a line break, and then you have Andrew. That's fine. Okay, so make sure. Oh, sorry, you probably don't see this. Okay, there you go. So make sure you comply to the following. Okay, so Windows is 17 characters, iPhone or BlackBerry is 24 characters, iPad is 23, Android is 32. That's on mobile device. And if you're on desktop, it's between 25 to 30 for Outlook. And for Gmail alone, it's limited to 20. Okay, for desktop. Definite, I know because I've tested it. All right. And then on Yahoo, it depends on the dimension of your desktop monitor screen. Okay, so there's no way to calculate from there. So the sweet spot, like I mentioned, is between 20 to 25, and start with a name or a brand that you think your recipients is familiar with. So you give priority to that, and then you can continue to use the rest of it. And if it's truncated, at the very least, the key name or the brand name or your name comes up first. Okay, so that concludes um, Sarah's question. And if you, quick one, if you are looking for somebody to help with your email marketing, I've set up a series of services, and it's broken down to something as simple as setting up, let's say your MailerLite, to getting your authentication done. And it's all broken up so that it's easy for you to pick. All right. Go to this website, ants.digital/DFY, which stands for done for you. Scan this QR code, and you can then select one of the services or any of the services that you find is necessary, right, for you to do or get your email marketing on track. So with that, I'm done. 27 minutes. Pretty cool. Any questions from the floor? No. So thank you so much for attending today's session. I apologize for being a bit slow because I am a bit under the weather, but nevertheless, thank you so much for attending. If you're watching the replay, I'll thank you now, and I'll see you again next Wednesday. Just a quick one. If you have questions, like I say, like Sarah or Majid, go to this site. It's called ants.digital/ask, or scan the QR code. It leads you to a simple Google form where you can then submit your questions, and I will answer them in the following Wednesday. All right. So for those of you who are celebrating Chinese New Year, Gong Wei Fa Choi this weekend. And if you're not, there will be a long holiday. So enjoy your holidays, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Andrew Wong signing off. Good night and take care. Cheers. Bye.